Hello, my name is Loretta Bailey. We really appreciate you guys joining us tonight. I know you had many other things you could choose to do, like Netflix and chill, but you're here. So I'm very, very grateful for that. Hopefully, you can pick up some tips and some valuable information to make your gardening a little easier and less cumbersome for those that don't like gardening. But hopefully, most of you do like gardening. A lot of my TCC students, when I ask them, who is here because they love gardening? Surprisingly, not everybody. Some people absolutely hate gardening and they see it more as a chore, but hopefully we can change your mind on that because it's basically therapy. It's really good for the soul just to go outside and be in the sunshine and around your green plants and to tend to them. All right, so today we're going to talk about successful gardening practices. It could also be called successful gardening tips because I'm going to talk about a lot of different things, A to Z. Usually our topics are, chickens or native gardening or propagation, but this one is kind of a broad range. So bear with me. Your brain might get a little fuzzy as I talk about this topic and then I jump to that topic, but it's all related to gardening and it's all hopefully going to benefit you, maybe save you some money, frustration, and so forth. But first, I need to share a message from Tarrant Regional Water District. They help support this and bring this to you. It will be a 2-minute, there we go. All right. This presentation is supported by our regional water supplier. They are called Tarrant Regional Water District, TRWD for short. They maintain 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean it to meet drinking water standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, and Mansfield, to provide water conservation programs to the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of a growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people in Tarrant County, and this is expected to double over the next 50 years. This is why TRWD supports many programs that help save water through outdoor watering and gardening education. At SaveTarrantWater.com, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. If you are a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler system checkup where a licensed irrigator comes to your home and provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system and recommendations to reduce water waste. I have personally done that, and it is a great service. I highly recommend it. There's also an event calendar where you can find information about future classes and workshops. TRWD also partners with organizations like Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service and the Tarrant County Master Gardeners to provide educational programs like this one. So be sure to check out their website, SaveTarrantWater.com. Okay, that was a mouthful. So now we can move on to our class. Okay, some of you may have heard this before, but a very important thing to start with for any garden, whether you have moved into a new house or you're just now getting started in landscaping it, or maybe creating a vegetable bed, flower bed, butterfly garden, whatever you want to do, you need to get a soil test, okay? We don't make money off of this. It is $12 to get this done. You scoop up some soil out of your yard, put it in a Ziploc bag, mail it into Texas A&M's laboratory, and they will give you this analysis. Just do the cheap one, the little $12 one. You don't need to do the extensive test, okay? Just do the $12 one, and they will give you what you see here. So this is my test that I got back. Let's take a look at this real quick. Nitrate N, okay? That's nitrogen. If you look over here and you see that dotted line, okay? That's the critical level. So that's the minimum amount needed, okay, for a healthy yard, okay? What do you see there? It's a little deficient in nitrogen. which is very normal because plants uptake nitrogen like crazy, okay? That's why we typically add nitrogen to our grass to green it up. Phosphorus, okay? I'm a little deficient there too, which is just fine. I'd much rather it be deficient so I can add some if I need to. But look at that potassium. You know, potassium is also known as the letter K for short. Potassium, I have too much. Look at that. Okay. This is why I need to know this and why you guys need to know this. Your test can come back completely different. I have seen some people with tests where they had absolutely no nitrogen. It was zero. It didn't even register. And no wonder they're having issues. They need to apply nitrogen. So in this situation here, when you look at a bag of fertilizer, you see three numbers on the bag. Okay, it'll say like 10-10-10 or 20-5-10. You get what I'm saying? It's on the fertilizer. Sometimes it might be on the back. You might have to look for it. But for my situation here, I don't need any more potassium. I don't need that third number. Okay. So why are you guys not getting this done and applying the wrong fertilizer? It's so important to know this. A lot of people nowadays are getting feedback from the laboratory here that you have way too much phosphorus. I'm seeing a lot of reports come back with too much phosphorus. They're having issues in their yard. So don't keep applying what you already have, okay? Texas A&M will also give you a calculation and kind of a dosage of what you need to apply. So all of that will be given to you, no questions. And if you have any questions, you can obviously ask them also, but you need to start with this. This is so important. It's like when you're sick and you go to the doctor, you get a blood test, and the doctor is able to recognize if your red blood cells are too high or your calcium levels through the roof. And then they diagnose and treat you accordingly. Same thing with your soil, okay? So make this little $12 investment, save a lot of money in the long run, not having to deal with issues. This is the website to get started. Texas A&M AgriLife Extensions, soil water testing. Just go to this website right here, soiltesting.tamu.edu. Okay, and again, you only need to do the $12 test, but I highly recommend you do that to have a successful garden. Some people will ask, you know, do I need to do my vegetable garden separately or my flower garden separately? Me personally, I just think you should do one just to get a baseline of where you're at. Obviously, don't go digging into your soil right after you fertilized because that's cheating. You're not going to get an accurate reading. So do it when you're about due for your next fertilization if you fertilize. If you're having issues in your vegetable bed, you may want to get that one tested separately, especially if you have a raised veggie bed and you purchase soil for that veggie bed. I'm going to be honest, many, many years ago, I actually bought really deficient, bad soil. I trusted the vendor. They called it vegetable mix. It sounded great, but I had a lot of issues. It was very unproductive, and I thought something's not right with this. So in situations like that, get those particular areas tested. All right, let's jump to precipitation, something that's really, really important here. You guys know that we have a lot of drought, okay? It's kind of disheartening as a gardener. I wish we got some more rain. We do get some rain, but then it kind of pours and we end up getting floods and then it's drought condition again. So yeah, I wish we could average it out, but it just doesn't happen that way. That's why we need to prepare. We need to get the right plants in our yard. We need to get even the right vegetables and fruits into our yard. Don't go out and make the mistake of buying the wrong ones and wasting your money. Okay, our climate here is so different. I will tell you where to get those landscape plant, veggie plant shopping lists later on. Okay, but let's go ahead and get started here. Look at this, top 10 wet states. Must be nice. Now let's jump to Texas. We are number 37 out of 50 states. Okay. We don't even make the top half. We're in the last half. If you're curious on who number 50 was, the driest state in the US, can you guess? Utah. Yep, Utah. So we get about 27 inches of rain per year. That's not a lot. Okay. Again, if it was averaged out, it might be a little bit better, but it's kind of like one and done. And then here comes drought. We haven't had rain here in a long time. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention about this too, very important. When you look up online information and you need to find out where the source is, who's saying all this stuff, who's giving you this information. It might be somebody who typed up an article in Maine, okay? Completely different. We can't listen to that advice. We can't listen to their top 10 shrubs to grow advice. A lot of these big manufacturers, producers of plants, I'm on their list too. I won't name them, but they send you these beautiful articles saying, these are our top 10 flowers this summer. These are our top 10 low maintenance shrubs. But when I look at them, most of them cannot grow here. We're going to have issues because we have too much drought. It gets too hot, or we get that little 1 week freeze that, we do have a 1 week winter here where it freezes, and it's enough to kill plants, that are tropical. So watch where you get your information. This is why it's important that you're tuning in today, because I'm going to give you all the information where you can just look this up at home, print out your list. You won't buy the wrong plants. Look at that. What just popped up? Plant native and drought tolerant plants. Okay. We're in North Texas. We need to do that. I wanted to share this with you. You need to buy plants after you research them. I know as gardeners, sometimes you go to the store and you see beautiful flowers. Oh, I want that. I want this. I want that. It's like Christmas time. You can't do that because you're either going to have to dig it up, bring it inside. Who wants to do that? As I've gotten older, I stopped buying plants that I have to bring inside because that's more maintenance. I don't know what it is, but I guess I'm just getting lazier as I get older. I find myself busy enough where I don't want to do those things. I don't want to bring in lemon and lime trees. I don't want to bring in an avocado tree or tender succulents, things that I have growing outside in the spring, summer, fall. I don't want to bring those in and have to tend to them over the winter months. It's just more work for me. So everything I buy now has to be able to live outside. So right after that freeze, a lot of people went shopping to the big box stores and other places looking for replacement plants. Well, about that time is when I found this plant, and I still see it in the big box stores. It's called Duranta erecta. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh, that's a real bright, eye-catching color, good curb appeal color. And I was looking for something like that because sometimes I'll put sweet potato vine in some pots and that really, has that bright color. So I thought, well, these are a shrub. So maybe this will have more holding power throughout the year, something I can use as a perennial, perhaps. So I started reading the plant tag. First of all, the word tropical, red flag. Tropical usually means tender. Okay, we're not in a tropical region. I like the evergreen part. Okay, the size 2 to 4 feet tall, but as a perennial can get 18 feet tall. Wow, but obviously manageable by trimming it if you want. Everything sounded okay. My soil here, I don't know if you noticed that on my test, it is 7.8. So it is moderately alkaline. Most plants like it slightly acidic. Okay, neutral is 7. So slightly acidic. Most plants like it in about the 6.5 range. Mine is 7.8. So I know right there not to go out and get a bunch of acid-loving plants, because if I do, they're going to go downhill year after year. I don't want that high maintenance. I don't want to have to put special fertilizer on them to keep them growing. One plant that likes a lot of acidity that I'm talking about is azaleas. They look good the first year, and then the second year they are okay, every year they start to dwindle because they want that that acidic fertilizer. Okay, let's get back to this. We keep moving on. Hardiness zones 10 to 11, right there. Okay, that's a deal breaker for me because we are in zone 8. This is for a climate lower than us, down south. Okay, Central and South America is where it's native. That makes sense. I don't want to buy a plant like this because if I leave it outside, it will die. It will not make it through our winter. Let's take a look at what I have written here. Don't waste your money. Okay. Can it handle consecutive 100+ degree days? You need to ask yourself these questions before you spend your money. Can it handle our drought and freezes? Is it evergreen or deciduous? Do you want it to uh, give you privacy? If it's a large shrub or tree, do you want it to give you some more privacy from a neighbor or a 2-story house behind you? Perhaps you need evergreens and not deciduous plants. How big will it get? This is an important one. How messy will it be messy around your pool, patio, or driveway? I'll pick on crepe myrtles just because most people know what that is, but it's not advised to put that next to your driveway because if you park on your driveway, you guys know that crepe myrtles have those bugs that like to, um, eliminate, and they can drop a lot of honeydew and such on your car, and also the flowers drop, the seed pods drop, and you run over them, and it just makes a mess. So as you're planning your landscape, think about those things. Will this make my life easier, or will this be another maintenance item where I have to use the blower or sweep, or will it clog up the pool filter with all its leaves? We've got to think about those things before we start planting. So do your research, and also just be aware of the plants that are hardy in our area. Pay attention to those plants' labels. I know this seems very ABC, but a lot of people don't. They just look at the flower, think it's great. Consider all of these, okay? All of these. Most importantly for me, I'm a huge propagator. I love to propagate and clone my plants, meaning make a duplicate of what I already have. You save money that way. I will say some plants you're not allowed to. They're prohibited from being propagated. So do watch out for that, read those labels. But I do keep all my labels so that when I propagate them or divide them, however way you're propagating them, you always know which variety you have. Look at this boxwood right here, Green Mountain boxwood. Some of you know there's a Korean boxwood, Japanese boxwood, so many different boxwoods. If you propagated this, for instance, now you know if you kept the label, it's a Green Mountain boxwood. So if you go to a garden club meeting or want to swap with friends, you can also give it to them with a proper label on it so they know exactly what they're getting. See this privet tag? I put an X on it on purpose just to remind myself to tell you guys, please try not to purchase privets. They are very invasive and destructive to our natural environments here, our forests and wild areas. They come in a lot of different forms. There's this variety here. There's the wax leaf ligustrum. Some of you may know it as that. But the privets, they throw out seeds. The birds eat the seeds and disperse them in natural areas. They grow too fast and too well, and they end up shading out our desirable natives here, which our native bugs, our native wildlife need to eat on those native plants. But when these other plants that are non-native, the invasive ones take over, it becomes disruptive and an issue. So please be aware of that. Let's read this. A poor gardener grows weeds, a good gardener grows plants, and a great gardener grows soil. That is so, so true, okay? When I was younger, I always used things like chemicals. If I found holes in my leaves, I jumped to the store and tried to buy a spray to kill that bug. I thought, how dare that bug come and mutilate my plants? But you know what? That's part of nature. You should have bugs in your yard that are chewing through your leaves. Of course, if they're chewing it down to the ground, that's a little heartbreaking. But Usually that's not the case. They're just doing a little destruction. Okay. They have to eat too. Just remember your backyard is their kitchen. Okay. So if I went into your backyard and it was sterile and you had no bugs, no butterflies, I would think, oh, something's wrong here. Okay. It's nature. Also, spraying. You don't want to spray and kill the good guys who are actually helping you. They're there to keep the bad bug population down. So we want to protect those guys. We want to protect bees. We want to protect lacewings, um, ladybugs, mantids. There are so many out there that are desirable. They're an army to help us. So don't go out spraying. Only 3% of bugs are actually considered harmful or a nuisance. The 97%, they're the good guys. They're there to help you keep things in balance. Also, it's a personal choice that I've made, but I do prefer to go organic. I want to feed my soil so that my soil can nurture and grow better plants, healthier plants. This is not, a class to change your mind or anything like that, but I have found that the gentler I am with my yard, meaning more organic, adding good things to the soil. I like to use seaweed fertilizer, fish fertilizer, things like that to really nurture the soil and build good bacteria, compost. I noticed that my plants reacted in a very positive way versus using the chemical route. So do your research on that and make your own decision. But I'm telling you, it does work. All right, you guys recognize this as clay soil. Most of you probably have it. I know some parts of the Metroplex have different types of soil, but you'll see here that it's definitely like clay, like you can make a pot out of it. Those particles, if you look at them under a microscope, are very tiny, so they compact with each other. And that's why it's really hard for water to permeate through it. Okay, unlike sand, if you have sand, those are bigger particles, water just runs right through that. But clay, once it does absorb water, it has really good holding capacity, but it's really hard to get water to penetrate into it. So if we have a flash flood one day, that's great if we do, but most of that water just ends up trickling down. Okay. It doesn't penetrate. Some of it does. We really need a slow, long-term rain to really get the benefit from rain. That's why we use the cycle and soak method in our sprinkler systems. What I mean by that is if you water a zone for 10 minutes, don't do that. Split it into 2 different times. Do 5 minutes the first round, go through all your zones, and then it comes back and does another 5-minute cycle on that same zone after it's had time to initially absorb water like a little sponge. Then the second round, it'll actually absorb more water. So more money in your pocketbook, saving water, your lawn will look better, your plants will look better. So that's why we use that method. But back to this clay soil, a lot of plants don't like it because it's compacted, the roots can't really permeate through it and bust through it. It's a hard time. That's why we should really amend. If you have really hard soil like this, you can use compost and you can use expanded shale. We're going to talk about those. The best way to amend your hard brick-like clay soil is to use both expanded shale and compost. You can put down 2 to 3 inches of each, kind of like a blanket of each product, and then till it in 6 inches to 12 inches deep. Okay, you can use a shovel if you want to, but that's going to be the best way to create a very rich, plant happy flower bed, vegetable bed, if you have a hard clay soil. Research was done by Dr. Steve George at Texas A&M. He did many, many years of research, and he is a huge proponent of compost like I am. But in his studies, to combat hard clay soil, he found that expanded shale with compost was the winning ticket. So I do urge you to take care of your flower beds if you have that compacted hard clay. Where do you find expanded shale? Usually not in the big box stores. I have not found it there ever. I've looked. It's usually found at, the smaller stores. Um, Stores I have seen it at, Marshall Grain, Russell Feed, Tractor Supply, stores like that. This is what it looks like. They look like pebbles, but it's very lightweight, very porous. A lot of air pockets are in there. It loosens tight clay soils, aerates, and makes it more workable, makes it easier for you. Your plants will love you. You only add it once, okay? It's a one and done material. You don't have to do this year after year. Do it once, you are done for the life of that bed. Compost, on the other hand, is something that you add periodically as needed. I like to add compost 2 to 3 times a year to my beds. Anytime I plant a new plant, even if I just dig a round hole for a particular plant, I will dig the soil, throw some compost in there that I make at home, mix it around, then put my annual or new perennial. That's how I plant everything. I don't plant anything without a scoop of compost. So why not make it free at home? You can buy it. A lot of people will just go buy it. There's a lot of brands that you can purchase. But, I'm the only one in my house that eats vegetables and fruit. That's correct. My husband is a meat. He does eat potatoes and salsa, but he just does not like to eat fruits and vegetables. But I still accumulate so much, lettuce, the core of lettuce, apple cores, watermelon rinds. I eat meat too, but it's amazing how much I produce in vegetable waste at the end of the week. I use a huge plastic pickle jar and I just fill it throughout the week and I stick it in my freezer so it doesn't go rancid. And then about once a week, sometimes twice a week, it will fill up. Okay, it's almost a 2 gallon jar. I will then fill it with water because there's a lot of little air pockets in it, a lot of space. Because compost really needs to be watered. It needs to be kept moist. You don't want it to dry out or it won't decompose. It'll just kind of sit there with the contents. So I do that. Why not? Because I'm making a trip to the compost anyways. And then I dig a hole. These are my kitchen scraps now. I dig a hole in the top of my compost and I bury my kitchen scraps. Why do I bury them? You don't want to dump them on top and walk away because then you're inviting the neighborhood rodents and critters to come and have a little buffet. You don't want mice and squirrels and stuff going through it. So make sure you dig a little hole. It literally takes me 5 seconds. I keep a little 3-prong tool next to my compost. I dig a little hole in the middle, dump my contents, cover it up, walk away. Easy as that. Look at these materials that you can add. Twigs, newspaper. If you guys have a paper shredder, use that. Don't throw that away. That's compost. Don't throw away that good stuff. Look at all this. So many different things. Eggshells. Now you don't want to add meat or fats, but eggshells are okay. Coffee grinds. I drink a lot of coffee, so all my coffee grinds, my tea bags, they all go in there. So this gives you a good idea of what you can put in there, but this is not all you can put in there. Pretty much all organic kitchen scraps, fruits and veggies. You can use perennial clippings. You can even use grass clippings if you want. You can use hay. You can use dried up leaves. You can use toilet paper rolls, the core, the cardboard part of it. You can recycle those or put them in your compost. Mine make it into the compost quite frequently. You can use shredded up or ripped up cardboard. It doesn't have to be fine. I'm lazy. If you're lazy too, just gently rip it and stick it in there. So this is typically what a compost pile looks like. Mine is never this perfect or pretty, but it gives you a really good idea so you can visualize it. Let's start down here. Typically, you want to start with a brown layer. You don't have to, but wood chips. Then there's green leaves. Then there's brown leaves. Then there's some grass clippings, straw, kitchen scraps, and more brown leaves. Okay, it doesn't have to be in this order. Whatever you have, whatever you can put together, this is fine. I hardly ever have this much material to be able to make these lasagna layers. So I just, add things as I go. The key here is carbon to nitrogen, the ratio. That means brown to green, same language, okay? Carbon is brown, nitrogen is green. What you need to do is have this golden ratio. You need to have 2 to 1 to make it work. 3 to 1 is also acceptable. Okay, you can do either one. Compost should never stink. If you tried composting and you failed because it stunk, gnats were all in it, you couldn't stand walking by it because of the smell, it's because you had way too much nitrogen or green. Maybe you only added your kitchen scraps, okay? You have to have carbon to balance that out. No, you're not going to always have this ratio, okay? But I told you what to do with the kitchen scraps. Just kind of lightly bury it, put it in there, cover it back up. Good to go. But you do have to have this ratio to not have the smell or the stink and to have a successful decomposing compost. You also need to make sure and water in between all the layers. You don't want it to dry out or it'll just sit there. Keep it moist. How do you use compost? I'll let you guys read this. I'll be quiet for a second while you catch up on this. Okay, this is just a general rule. You don't have to follow it to a T. Potted plants, trees, and shrubs. Okay, potted plants, they're already in a pot. You can just top dress, meaning sprinkle it on top like you do Parmesan cheese on a pizza. Just sprinkle it on top. All that good nutrition will eventually sink in. Trees and shrubs that are existing, obviously you don't want to rough up their roots or anything or dig it in. Just sprinkle it on top. That's called top dressing. And they will thank you. It's wonderful for them. The roots will be happy. You'll see a difference. Some people ask, do you need to screen it so that it's fine, only fine material? I personally don't. I told you I'm a lazy gardener, so I don't do that extra step, but some people want to see that commercial looking fine, straight out of the bag compost. Like I said, you don't have to. You don't want large chunks, but this is totally acceptable. This is actually some compost that I made, my own personal homemade compost. Wonderful stuff. It's garden gold. So don't waste your stuff. Don't put it in the landfill. Recycle it, put it back into your yard. All right, now we're going to jump to proper edging, okay, to make your life a little easier. If you don't have some form of edging, it's going to be a maintenance nightmare, okay? This metal edging is one of my favorites, but it can be very spendy, very expensive. It even went up to like $33 per 8-foot section when inflation first started going up, but it has since gone back down. I remember when it was like $8 or $9 per 8-foot section. So that's the one I like. It seems to last almost forever. It's very easy to install. You just perforate the ground after you irrigate and then pop it in, kind of lightly hammer it in. You're good to go. If you're on a budget, not everybody can afford expensive things at any time. You're on a budget, or maybe you're spending money elsewhere. You can do a trench cut edging like this. It's a very nice look and free. The only downside is you kind of need to freshen it up about once a year with your shovel. You're basically shoveling straight down and lifting up, okay, to create this little trench. Here is a graphic to show what that looks like. So you're using a shovel to go straight down. This top layer is mulch, okay? This is the soil. What happens here is your lawn does not want to continue here. Not to say that it won't, especially Bermuda. Bermuda is a very nasty grass. It wants to get into your flower beds and everywhere. So you do have to maintain it sometimes and pull where it's not supposed to go. But It doesn't want to grow this way because this soil tends to dry out on the edge. So it wants to stay contained in this area where it's a little more moist. So this is why it's an effective way of edging and free. Who doesn't like that? Edging problems, okay? What do you expect to happen here over time? By the way, this is one that I do not recommend. I see people do it all the time and I shake my head. It's going to give you a headache and maybe heartbreak later on. I took these pictures at a local fast food place in their drive-through. Look at this. They already have grass growing in it. Okay. How are you going to edge and maintain this grass that's just going right through these stones and gravel? Some people even just pour gravel down without any kind of barrier. You're asking for trouble because that grass is just going to grow right through it. Okay. And then you have to resort to hand pulling like crazy or herbicide chemical treatment, which I don't like to do. So I urge you to think about your edging choice and choose properly. Also, if you're using your weed whacker or your edger, my goodness, one of these rocks or pebbles could fly into the air into your face. So not a great edging choice. So think about that. You can use rocks, but I would use some bigger ones that are going to stay put and help to keep grass out. When you apply gravel, I see a lot of people do this. They just put gravel on the ground. Grass can go right through it. Hopefully it's an established area where you've actually lifted the grass up, dug it up, but you still need to put this weed fabric down. I don't mean the stuff from the dollar store. That stuff is very weak. This is going to be more like the commercial grade. You can buy it online. Weed fabric, very sturdy. If you apply gravel just on the ground, it will sink over time. Then you have to spend more money 3 to 4 years later to replenish another level because yours is already sunk in so deeply that you see dirt again. So do it the right way the first time. Put down that weed fabric, then put down your gravel. This is what happens when you don't use weed fabric. The rocks will sink and it'll just be a mess. Okay, here it's done properly with weed fabric. And look at that, easy yard maintenance idea. I love putting gravel around pool equipment, air conditioning units, because that's less to mow and edge. Can you imagine having to mow and edge in between all of these? And usually grass doesn't even want to grow in those crevices because it's too shady. So you end up with a muddy mess. Okay, rain falls, maybe you have a dog that likes to wander back there, then they've got muddy paws. The only thing that I would recommend here though is to put an edging down, okay, to separate the grass from the gravel. I would do that and make sure you use that weed barrier fabric and then your gravel. So this makes your life easier by getting rid of these little nooks and crannies in your yard. Let's talk about plant size. A lot of people don't pay attention to those plant tags and end up buying a cute little shrub that ends up being a 20 or 25-foot shrub. And they're constantly hacking it down to suit their needs, spending their weekends doing something that they shouldn't have to do. There's a saying, right tree, right place. Obviously, under power lines, you don't want to put a big live oak. Those get huge. They're huge, majestic trees when they mature. Maybe something short like a smaller crepe myrtle or a redbud tree, something small. But a lot of the builders too, and their landscapers, I guess they're going out and just getting the cheapest thing available and putting it in. It's good to monitor what they're doing. So with over pruning, it exposes the plant to pathogens for pathogens to enter. Like look at this cut right here and this cut right here. You're just opening it for something to come by and enter. It stresses the plant. It can lead to an unnatural appearance and it's more work for you. Okay, so buy the right size tree and shrub. Look at that label. Make sure it's what you want in your front flower bed, on the sides, in the back. You don't want to buy something that says it can grow 20 feet and go, oh, I'll just keep cutting it down to 2 feet. No, no, enjoy your free time with your family instead. Buy the right plant. Over pruning and shearing, it's just more maintenance. And look how unnatural they look. Okay, maybe you guys like this look, you know? Do your yards look like this? I don't know. I'm not judging. Maybe I am a little bit, but um, this look was very popular in like the 1990s, the mushrooming meatball kind of look. It's very high maintenance because you're always out there trimming what's sticking out. The more you trim a shrub, the more it wants to bush out and leaf out. And you might get some crazy twigs growing, and then you have to go out there and level things out again. So I urge you to stop doing this. Get with the 2020s. Let your shrubs be the way they're meant to look. So try to appreciate the natural form of plants. I mean, look how beautiful this is and low maintenance for you. These are some people say they are native, but the dwarf Yaupon holly is actually only a half native, but we loosely say they're a native because they are half. But this, if this bothers you, maybe just cut this part to round it off. Maybe cut this part to round it off and just use your little hand shears. Just do some what's called selective pruning instead of shearing. Look over here at these Texas sages. There's all different kinds. It's a beautiful shrub. Maybe just cut these 3 twigs right here, this one, and this one to kind of balance it out. Maybe this piece right here. But think about that. If you just go and selectively prune with your little hand shears, that's going to be a little 5-minute job instead of shearing all of these down, having to load it into your truck or into bags and such. Not necessary. Okay. Buy the right size plant and quit shearing. It'll be easier on you and you'll have a better looking yard. Let's look at this example. They're both hollies. This one was shaped into what looks like an old snowman. Okay. What happened was it got sheared and the shrub wanted to leaf out again. Well, look at this big twig. It really got crazy. So it just has a really bad appearance. Any little twig, you feel like you have to go out and trim it again. We don't want to do that. Here's a naturally pruned holly, and you're not going to have such erratic growth. You will have growth, but it's going to look like part of the shrub or plant that you have. It's not going to look out of place. So I hope you're following me here and understanding less is more, and it's beneficial for you and your plants. There comes a time and a place, especially if you have an older home where your shrubs have overgrown. Maybe you did plant the wrong ones or your builder did, and you're like, my home's looking dated. It's amazing what a new landscape will do. And you can do that. You don't have to rip everything out. Sometimes you have to revitalize your old shrubs, though. This is a severe prune, okay? This is a hard prune. Sometimes it's necessary, but make sure you look up the information. Remember, I told you to keep those plant tags. Hopefully you did. You can type in, can my such and such boxwood take a severe prune, a hard prune? Look that stuff up because I don't want you to blame me for any deaths that occur. But I will say most shrubs, 99%, can take a hard prune. Okay. Here's a lighter prune, but they are still going at it with the shears to decrease the size. There is a time and a place. I do this, the lower picture on my Salvia greggii, the autumn sages, because it does produce more blooms. I do this about 3 times a year to those. Just lightly, I'll cut about the top 2 inches off all around so that it forces them to give me another bloom. And it gets rid of the old spent flowers. You don't have to do it, but it kind of revitalizes them. So generally the best time to hard prune shrubs is early spring, right before that spring flush. You don't want to do it this late in the season. This is not the right time to hard prune. So please don't do it now. Wait until spring. But here's a question. When does your shrub flower? Okay. I said do it in the spring, right? But if your shrub is a spring bloomer, you're going to miss out on all those blooms. So wait until those blooms are dead and spent, then do your trim. But again, you need that plant tag to look up if your plant, when your plant flowers, or maybe hopefully if you've had it for a few years. Does your plant bloom or produce fruit on old wood or new wood? Some plants, the stem has to be a year old for it to produce something for you. Some bloom on new wood only, so it kind of likes a fresh cut. Some hydrangeas, clematises, there's different group numbers for clematises, and there are different hydrangeas that require different times to prune because some of them bloom on old wood, some bloom on new wood, and some varieties bloom on both old or new, so it doesn't matter. But you need to find that information out before you start chopping away. Don't hard prune in the fall, like I said. The main reason is because once you do that, the plant loses its covering, its protective covering, and winter's coming. It needs those leaves. So don't do it now. Wait till spring. Also, if you trim now, it encourages new growth to kind of spurt out. That growth will be too tender and young to withstand our cold temperatures. So it's just going to burn and crisp up. It's going to freeze off. So you're back to a damaged shrub again. So just wait. Prune evergreens in early spring before the spring flush. Definitely don't want to trim evergreens this late in the season. It's very rough on them. Avoid thirsty plants. This is just one I'm picking on today. It's a hydrangea, not a native one. We have a native one called the oak leaf hydrangea. It loves to be in part shade to shade. It has beautiful white flowers on it. But the non-native ones, like the mop heads and such, they need a lot of water. And you're going to have to give them a lot of supplemental water when we have our drought season. That's just more work for you. So I say, quit buying those. Remember our hot and dry summer days when you go plant shopping. Right now, we're just thinking, oh, this is great. It's spring-like weather. Life is good again. But don't forget, we've got, 2 to 3 months of very, very harsh hot weather here. Some thirsty plant examples, there are so many, but this is just a few. Most hydrangeas, begonias. So please, plant native plants that thrive in our soil and environment. I will show you where to get that plant list later on. Oh, another thing, don't force grass to grow under trees. A lot of people do this. They keep over trimming their trees. Someone a couple weeks ago told me something that made me really laugh. They said, I'm tired of people broccoliing their trees. It's so true. This looks like a piece of broccoli. Just please stop. It's not good for your tree. We're just mutilating trees left and right, trying to get grass to grow. It's a losing battle. Not good at all. So don't mutilate your trees. Your trees are worth thousands, okay? Your lawn, not as beautiful anyways. That tree gives you shade. It's wonderful to have in your yard. It's worth a lot on your property value to have a beautiful tree in your yard. Plant smaller varieties of trees if you can. Work with nature. If you've got too much shade here, perhaps put in a mulched bed and just get rid of the grass altogether. Work with what you have, okay? Consider a clean mulch bed. I just said this a while ago, but here's an important factor. Where are the majority of the roots? The majority of roots on a tree are in the top foot of soil. So right below your lawn is the majority of tree roots, okay? Not all, but the majority. So we don't want to go tilling up and digging around those trees. One method that I really like is called lasagna gardening. Our TCMGA YouTube page, there's a video that I did that they posted on lasagna gardening where it's using cardboard to suffocate the grass, and then you put mulch right on top so you don't see the cardboard. It's not ugly or anything like that. Nobody even knows that cardboard is there. So you're not roughing up the tree's roots, but you're killing the grass over time, and it does not harm the trees. It's been done many, many times around trees. Trees actually end up perking up and being happier over time because they no longer have to compete for water and nutrients with those grass roots. When you're planting a tree, your sprinkler system is not enough to establish those trees and shrubs. You really need to hand water them. You need to kind of babysit them and water them. You know, maybe the first week you'll water them 2 to 3 times a week. The next week, maybe the same, depending on when you planted them and how dry it is outside. And then gently over time, taper off, okay? Until you're just watering them about once a week until they become established. It depends on the size of that root ball too, but you do have to kind of babysit and put in the work initially if you want a long-term healthy tree that is not going to have dieback, dying branches, look sickly. You need to do it right at the very beginning. And when you water, it needs to be a slow drip for a long period of time so that it can permeate and really soak into that soil. So not a little 2-minute spray and you're done. You really have to water slowly and a little longer for that soil to absorb that water. When you're planting your tree, most city trees and neighborhoods I've seen, they're way too deep. They look like a stop sign pole in the ground, just straight down, a stick that's straight down. You need to expose that root flare. See this? This is your soil level, okay? But a lot of city trees and neighborhoods, the soil is up to here. Really bad for the tree. It may not show any dieback or stress initially, but 10 years more down the line, that poor tree is going to say, help, I'm too deep. These roots need oxygen too. They don't need to be this deep. So always think about a wine glass, how it tapers and flares out at the bottom. That's how your tree should look. If you look at a forest, okay, or a natural area, I urge you to go visit the Fort Worth Nature Center. It's pretty cool. They've got bison there. I've never seen alligators, but I hear that occasionally they'll have an alligator. You can rent a canoe, go canoeing. It's just a pretty awesome place to walk around. They've got trails, but if you go look at their natural areas, go look at the trees that were not planted by humans. They were naturally occurring by seed, okay? You will see a natural root flare. This is how trees should be planted. So keep that in mind. When you dig your hole for your tree, do not add amendments. Back in the day, we were all misguided. We were told add compost, mix it all in, then plant your tree. What happens is those tree roots want to stay in that yummy, delicious soil that you've added. They don't want to stretch out. You need those supportive anchor roots to branch out like your arms, straight out. They need to go left and right instead of encircling the root ball. That causes girdling down the line. But after you plant your tree, you might need to add a little more soil on top. It's okay. You can add a little bit of compost on top to top dress it. But do not add it inside the hole. Loosen the roots. When you take it out of its pot, it should not be planted like this. You are asking for trouble. You need to be kind of rough. Go ahead and brush those out. I like to use my 3-prong tool. Sometimes I use a knife even to cut those. It's okay. Go ahead and do the damage now because your tree will thank you in the future. You're going to have a long-term, healthy, more longevity in your tree if you do it the right way initially. So examine the roots out of the pot. Loosen the roots before planting. And it's okay. You're going to feel mean when you do this, but you have to do it. Cut long roots if necessary. What I'm saying is, you dig the hole 2 to 3 times wider than the root ball, right? Everybody kind of knows that. Well, your 2 to 3 times the root ball, your roots might be 6 feet long once you unravel them. Well, obviously you can't plant all of those roots. So go ahead and cut them where necessary to fit into your hole, where they spread straight out, where they're not circling or acting like a necklace around your tree root. Also, don't dig too deep, okay? Remember, we want that root flare to be up. If you don't keep checking, grab your root ball, put it into the hole, maybe get a measuring stick and push it, or a 2x4 and lay it across. Make sure you're not too deep with that tree. If you over dig too deep and then you decide, oh no, it's too deep, and then you backfill, that dirt is no longer uh, uh, compacted enough. It's actually going to sink later on because it's fluffy now, because you've added it back and that soil has been messed with. So that's why it's really important not to mess with the soil underneath the root ball. That should stay intact the way nature was. Only dig 2 to 3 times wider than the root ball. Rough up the edges of your hole, okay? Remember that clay soil I talked about? We're basically making clay bowls when we use our shovel to dig down. Rough up those edges to keep in mind that those roots want to penetrate and get through that clay. So help it up by roughing up the edges so they can do that. Don't leave it slick and hard. After you put your root ball in, add half the soil back and then water it in. We want to ensure there are no air pockets down in there. And then add the rest of your soil, water again. Ooh, a lot of people do this. Your front yard might look like this, and I don't want you to be alarmed by this. When I mentioned this to the public, with couples, I'll see them looking at each other and showing a little distress. Just don't do it if you can. The reason is because it causes root damage. Remember I talked about those anchor roots? Okay, just spread your left and right arm out. Your head is the trunk of your tree, basically. Those anchor roots keep that tree erect and upright. If you continuously cut and injure those anchor roots, then you're asking for trouble, okay? Those keep the tree safe and intact. If we have a windstorm, a tornado, you want that tree to stay where it is. You don't want it to fall over or even break. Even a heavy rain can cause the soil to shift and get soft, and you'll see trees fall over. So, and if you talk to a certified arborist, they will tell you that most tree failure happens because a gardener or somebody or construction went in there at some point or another and started digging around and damaged those anchor roots. So be careful with that. Those anchor roots don't feed the tree. They're just there to what they're called, anchor the tree. So please be careful with those. Try not to dig around your tree. If you see big roots, let them be. So we recommend that you stop doing this. And please don't build raised beds around mature trees. We just talked about how you don't want your trees to be too deep. Well, when you do this, you're causing a problem. It's now too deep. Now, if you do this at the time of planting your tree, you'll be okay, as long as you have that root flare, but don't do it around a mature tree. Add a mulched bed around new trees. On the right side here, imagine mowing and edging. It's going to damage the bark of this little tree. So we recommend having a nice mulched bed around your trees, making sure the root flare is visible. The only thing about this picture is you really don't want your mulch touching the tree bark. You want to kind of rake that away with your hands a little bit. Okay. You don't want to do this. You do not want to cause tree volcanoes with mulch. Again, the root flare is no longer visible. It causes a lot of moisture to build up here, which pathogens and insects like to burrow in. So yeah, let's not do these volcanoes anymore. A local big box store near me does this, and it drives me bonkers because I just know people go there to shop and they think if Home Depot does it, it must be right. It's misleading. It's damaging trees. So please don't do this. Let the tree breathe. This is proper mulching. Okay, 2 inches deep is what's recommended. You don't want too much mulch because then you prevent oxygen and airflow too. Roots need oxygen too. Don't forget that. Ideal soil for plants, okay, not for all plants, but most plants, is 50% soil or organic matter, 25% water, and 25% air, oxygen. They need oxygen too, but we keep, drowning our indoor plants by overwatering. If you're unsure, just step away, don't water. This is important. I need to let you guys know about this if you're not aware. We should not be trimming oak trees between February and June. You can find more information through Texas A&M's Forest Service. I'll give you their website in a little while. But this little beetle is going around and munching on trees and spreading this disease. It's devastating, heartbreaking, and it's only affecting the oak trees, the oak wilt disease. Root to root transference. I'll talk about that in a minute. But these beetles are very active between this time frame, February through June. Some people even say July, August. They say, you know what, just don't even trim until the winter months when the tree's dormant. And that's excellent advice. But sometimes, maybe that tree limb is knocking you in the face. It's too low. Maybe it broke, so you have to get to it. There are situations where you do. Texas Forest Service does recommend painting those cuts immediately, especially if it's during this risky time frame, because you don't want the sap to come out of that cut area and attract this beetle. That's what the beetle is attracted to, that sap. So that's why we say don't trim, don't injure, don't poke at your trees between this time frame. This is when they're the most active. Root to root transference. So let's say that you're following the rules. You don't trim between this time. You've been a really good gardener, but your next door neighbor starts trimming his oaks. Well, not only is the beetle now coming towards your area because they smell that sap, it's an attractant. Their tree and your tree, if they're mature, they may have fused together roots. Those oaks like to do that. They like to fuse their roots together. And when that happens, they're also sharing whatever each one has. So that's what's called root to root transference. So if your neighbor's tree gets sick and it's connected to yours underground through roots, now your tree is sick. So I try to spread this through my HOA, neighborhood zip code. Please don't trim oak trees, live oak, red oak, live oak, any of those. Please follow this rule. TexasOakWilt.org is the Texas A&M Forest Service website. You can visit it, find out more information, maintenance, quick tips, and more map information on where it was discovered and so forth. All right, here's another tip. I told you we were going to bounce around, didn't I? A lot of people shake their heads and they ask me, what do I do about Bermuda grass invading my flower beds? To be honest with you, there's not a magic answer. The best way is to just spend 5 minutes every morning or maybe 10 minutes on the weekends surveying your flower beds. Take a look, spend some time while you're drinking your coffee. That's what I do. I go out and I drink my coffee and look around. Is everybody okay? Is there any damage? Is there anything I need to tend to? And if I see one little blade of Bermuda where it doesn't belong, I immediately get rid of it because, as you know, if you don't tend to it, a month later, you've got a little patch of Bermuda growing, which is really frustrating. And you try to dig it up, the roots break, and it's going to grow right back. So a quick tip is just to keep some cardboard on hand and put that cardboard right on top of that area and then cover it up with mulch. You won't even see it. Don't leave the cardboard exposed. It's going to fly away and it really looks junky. You don't want to leave it that way. Put down your cardboard on top of that grassy area that you had or the weedy area, anything, grass or weeds. Suffocate it because a plant cannot grow without photosynthesis, without the sun. So bury it, put that mulch right on top, call it a day. It should kill it in a matter of months without sunlight. This is also a way that I created all of my flower beds. I have a half-acre yard. I never dug up any of my Bermuda. It's backbreaking work with this clay soil that we have. So we also have a video on this on YouTube if you guys want to check that out. It's called Lasagna Gardening. You layer cardboard, overlapping it several sheets if you've got really thick, healthy grass, because it needs several sheets to kill it. It takes about a year, but you will now have a nice flower or vegetable bed to plant in. It just takes a little bit of patience, but no back-breaking work. That's what I love about it. And it composts the cardboard, so you don't see it. After about 12 months, maybe 14 months, it depends on how much uh, water it gets, how moist it gets. You know, I told you compost needs water to continuously break down, but it works great and it's free. I save a lot of money by propagating. I talked about this earlier. You have to watch out, you know, if that plant tag says, no, no, don't propagate this, it's prohibited, listen to it. I'm not telling you to break the rules or anything, but I get a lot of plants that other friends have given me. It doesn't have a tag on it. They tell me the name of it. You know, I don't really know the origins, to be honest. So I have a lot of things in my yard that have been shared with me. But I really like to use this simple layering technique because unlike cuttings, where you cut your piece from the mother plant, it's now dependent on you to water it, feed it, keep it out of the sun. It needs to be pampered delicately, or it could shrivel up and die because remember, it has no roots. So I like to do this because it's nearly 100% success rate of cloning your plant, the one that you want to replicate, and getting a free plant. Who doesn't like to save money? So this is how you do it. If you can stretch that limb down into the ground, it could be a vine, it could be a shrub. I do this a lot with abelia shrubs. You can do this with rosemary. You know, some twigs will break, so be careful. See how bendy and pliable it is. What you do is you injure underneath that stem. You get a pocket knife or anything, even your fingernail, if you've got strong fingernails, kind of injure it, kind of scrape it a little bit under one of the nodes. A node is basically the area where a leaf was, that little intersection. So your stem and where a leaf was, rip off that leaf and just kind of underneath it, kind of give it a gentle little scratch to kind of wake it up and say, oh, I'm injured, I need to grow. Bury it into the ground, push away your mulch, put it in the ground. It doesn't have to be deep. It just has to touch the soil. And I like to use these landscape pins. You can buy them online really, really cheap or at the big box stores and anchor it down and then put a little mulch over it. Nobody will even know what's going on. You could even put a rock or a brick over it, you know, as long as you allow this end to be exposed to continue getting sunlight. And then wait, you know, it depends on how quickly it roots, but you will get a free plant from that. And then once you see growth and you see this new plant growing, you sever it from the mother plant, dig it up, voila, you have a free plant. Plants are expensive now, so this is a really good way to save money if you've got a little patience. I would do this now, and in the spring, you're going to have a bunch of plants to plant. Another thing I want to give you, another tip, when you're looking at a plant, like let's say it's a beautiful view from your backyard, you're looking out in your backyard, you don't want to do a lot of these up in the front where it might look a little funny if you've got bricks laying down on them. Do it in the back of the plant so it doesn't disrupt the view. So here's a real life example of one of the ones that I did to show you. It is a Mexican mint marigold, this picture on the top right. It's actually a lot more yellow than this. This picture is really awful, but this is a native plant. It flowers now. It's in beautiful bloom right now. It's a perennial. It gets a little bigger every year. Very easy to propagate. You can propagate it from cuttings too. But again, cuttings need a lot more care. This is a surefire way to propagate it without any effort. So what I did here is grabbed one of the stems, I scratched the bottom of it, and I used a landscape pin to keep it down. You can use, like I said, a rock or anything heavy just to kind of lay on top of it. I like these because they do not move. You won't kick, you can kick a rock out of place or your dogs could move that brick, but these stay in place and you can use them again. In this situation, these root really, really fast. about a month. It's ready to go. I see new growth. It looks like it's its own plant now. I go ahead and sever it with my tool. Go ahead and sever it. And then you see here in this picture, I am digging it up. Okay. And I plant it where I want it. Voila, a free plant. And I didn't even have to babysit it because it's continuously being fed by the mother. You don't have to worry about it. It does help to, irrigate to spur some more rooting power, but it's so easy. I have propagated so many vines, shrubs, perennials doing this. It's pretty awesome. This is ABC information, pretty general, but you guys know there's some garden maintenance to do, deadheading. You need to cut back your perennials. I talked about the Salvia gregii, the autumn sage. It does benefit from a little shearing on that one to produce more flowers. It's great to divide your perennials like irises. If they get a little too crowded, you may notice less and less flowers throughout the years. It's time to dig them up, spread them out, share them with friends. Always mulch in our area. I don't typically fertilize a lot of my plants because the mulch, if it's a properly mulched bed, as that bottom layer that's touching the soil decomposes, it's compost. So it's feeding that tree and shrub for you. You don't even need to fertilize, to be honest. And if you're planting natives, you definitely don't need to fertilize. And that's usually what I go for is the natives. So it's very low maintenance for me. I don't have to do a lot. Life is good. All right, overwatering indoor plants. I have to talk about this because so many people are killing their indoor potted plants. Remember I told you, ideally plants want 50% soil or organic matter, 25% water, 25% oxygen. Okay, so when you do water completely, saturate it, but let that water drip out. Don't let it sit in a soggy, watery mess or in a saucer with a bunch of water in it. Let it soak up that water and then water accordingly. If it's a cactus, water sparingly. If it's something that needs more water, then you may need to water it more often. I like to use my finger in the soil to kind of see if it's really dry or not, an inch or two deep, depending on the plant. If you're uncertain, just walk away. Okay. If you're like, should I water it? Did I water it recently? Walk away. Oh, and gnats. If you have a lot of fungus gnats in your house and you have potted plants, that's a telltale sign that you overwater. A lot of you guys have given these a try and have given up. I did too, until I figured out a little trick. What I do on these cocoa fiber baskets now is I line them with a black trash bag. Okay, I save these up. Sometimes, you put trimmings and stuff in it, and I dump them in my compost when I'm ready. And then I've got this bag. I don't want to throw it away. So I save these and just cut a piece out. It's good to have these little corner pieces, but you can also use the top pieces. Just line the inside. And I say black because I've used white, like the kitchen trash bags. And if you even have a little half-inch piece sticking out, it's very ugly. These black trash bags are kind of camouflage. You really don't see them mixed in with the soil. But go ahead and line it, okay? And then stick your soil in it. So it's essentially like a plastic pot that's protected in that cocoa fiber layer. Nobody knows. And it's going to retain more moisture. What about the drainage hole? That's the number one rule. Plants should have a drainage hole, right? Well, my little secret again is not to put one right on the bottom. Okay. These are outdoor plants in these cocoa fiber containers. In our summer, it just gets too hot. They're kind of small. They have to be watered all the time, especially, depending on what you have in them. Don't put the hole right here where the water just pours right out. Put the hole about an inch above the bottom, right here on the side. Just put one hole on the side, okay? That way, when you water, this plant has time to fully absorb over a couple hours what you have given it instead of just pouring out through that bottom drainage hole. So again, don't put the hole in the bottom, maybe a half inch or an inch above the bottom level, right here on the side. just poke a little hole. You can use like a needle and kind of twist it around to make the hole a little bigger, or use a, those sewing needles that are a little bit chunkier. I don't know what they're called, but make your own little drainage hole on the side. And I'm telling you, your plants will no longer dry out. Now, you don't want to do this for plants like cacti or cactus. They do appreciate this very airy, uh, um, well draining environment. But for other plants like coleus or even some succulents, vincas, they're really pretty in these pots. So don't give up on these. Pull them out of your storage, out of your garage, give them another try, but do put that black plastic liner in it and you will thank me later. All right, so for you veggie gardeners, I talk about this a lot because it's really important. You cannot plant enemies together. There are plant enemies. For instance, look at this, garlic and beans. They don't like each other. Okay, so any place you see a red dot, that means don't plant these two together side by side in your garden. You better plant those two away from each other. Okay, a lot of drama in the garden that we didn't know about. Let's look at this one. Chives and peas, they are enemies too. What I mean by enemies is they can throw off an enzyme or something in the plant that the neighbor doesn't like. They can stunt growth. They can cause your plant not to produce. So we want to avoid that. Anything else with a green dot or white dot are okay. Just avoid the red dots. You can Google for this just by typing in companion vegetable plants in a Google or any internet search. I will provide this for you guys. We will email this to you when we follow up with you. I never ignore these vegetable calendars. I can't remember everything in the world. Sometimes I'm like, okay, when do I plant my okra again? I know it's a warm season, but I want to know exactly the ideal time to get that in the ground. This this AgriLife Extension vegetable calendar will help you do that. This one's for Collin County. I know you can't read it. There are many of these online, so be careful. Don't print the one that's for a different zone. Okay, that might be for zone 9 or 10. Totally different. We can't plant according to their timeline. So make sure it's a zone 8 calendar. Marshall Grain has a really good one that has so much good specific information in it. I also like to use theirs. You can find it on their website. We will also email that one to you. This one's really important. I always take one of these vegetable plant shopping lists with me when I go shopping, because I have found that when I just randomly pick any vegetable variety, it doesn't produce as well for me. Whereas these that Texas A&M has studied and tracked, these are their approved list. And I guarantee you, they're going to do so much better for you. For instance, this Sumter pickle or cucumber, I should say, I had so many that I had to make pickles. I just couldn't, I love eating them raw in salads too, but I just couldn't keep up. So I made a lot of pickles with them. Wonderful. So you want that kind of result. You don't want to plant a vegetable just to get two out of it, right? You want to show off and share them with friends and family. And these are going to be the ones that are the winners for our area. See right up here, it says recommended vegetable varieties for region B, our area, North and Central Texas. It doesn't say for Hawaii or Florida, right here for us, okay? I'll show you how to get this information. Don't worry about writing any of these down because I'm going to show you where to find this. This is your vegetable plants shopping list. All you have to do is simply Google or any internet search, just type in vegetable variety selector. It comes right up every time. You'll see Texas A&M, AgriLife, and there it is. Click on it. It's free. So this is what it looks like. See why I didn't give you the website, aggie-fort.tamu.edu. It's just too long. That's why, see that yellow arrow? Just Google vegetable variety selector. And I promise you it'll come right up in your Google search. So we're here. I typically don't mess with the counties and all that. Um, I just click right here on B. You can also click right here on the region. Okay, it's going to be North Central Texas. Then click on this, search by region. Or again, you can just click on this. The next page looks like this. Okay. Select vegetable varieties for region B, North and Central Texas. Okay. So right here on the drop-down menu, you can select tomato, cucumber, leeks, radishes, whatever you want, it's there. Or you can click on this bottom button to print the entire list, but it's going to be pages and pages. So you can do that and maybe just fold it up and keep it in your console in your car. So if you happen to drop in at one of these stores, you'll always have it for any variety of vegetable that you want. Or if you're on a mission and you want a specific tomato, go ahead and click on the specific one just to get the tomato list. So let's pretend we clicked on this and chose tomatoes, since that's a very popular vegetable. They say it's a fruit, but so here it is, recommended tomato varieties for region B for our area. These are all the ones, the large varieties, big tomatoes, medium tomatoes are right here. I put this arrow here just to indicate this is a long list of different tomatoes. It'll even show you like the canning tomatoes, good varieties for that. But look how specific it is. You guys have probably heard of these, the Better Boy, Big Beef. A lot of these are sold at the big box stores, the mom and pops. I've tried many of these. Do you know what the I means next to these tomatoes versus the D's? You know what heirloom means, okay? I is indeterminate variety. Indeterminate tomatoes are usually the vining long tomatoes, long tomato plants. They need a support, a trellis, a fence, something to climb on. And it's advised, recommended to trim those, so that they don't get gangly. You don't want too many leaves because you want more fruit production. These indeterminate tomatoes, and they will tell you on the label too, most of the time, will produce a few tomatoes throughout the whole growing season. D, determinate tomatoes are kind of a one and done. These tomato plants are typically bush tomatoes, they're smaller. Another key word would be patio tomatoes or container friendly tomatoes because they're smaller. These determinate ones will produce the tomatoes for you within 1 to 3 weeks, a bunch of them. And then the plant starts to kind of die off a little bit. So you might be thinking, oh no, I had such a good crop and then what happened? Well, that's what that tomato was supposed to do, okay? It could still produce a couple here and there, but that's what it's going to do. So if you want to can and you need a bunch at once or make marinara, determinate might be the way to go. If you want tomatoes throughout the whole season because you like them in your salads and things like that, indeterminate might be the way to go for you. So keep that in mind when you choose your tomatoes and stick to this list. It's a proven list for our area. Okay, just like the vegetable shopping list I told you about, this is the landscape ornamental plant version. Same thing. We won't go through all that, but click on B and you can select plants that way. Here's another great website that I use all the time. It's for your landscape plant shopping list. It shows pictures of the plants so you can make a better decision. Not all pictures are always there. The name will be, so you might have to Google to look at the picture, but all the information will be there. Is it drought tolerant? How big does it get? It's texassmartscape.com, txsmartscape.com. It's another freebie website specific to our area. Once you're there, click on plant search. The next page looks like this. Look how specific this is. Okay, region. Let's look at this real quick. Region. Experienced horticulture and landscape experts have evaluated the plants contained in this database to grow well in these particular regions of the state, North Central Texas and West Texas. So in this drop-down menu here, we are in North Central Texas, so that's what we're going to select. If you're in West Texas, choose West Texas, but I'm focused right now on North Central Texas because that's my county here. Plant type. This is going to be stuff like, do you want a tree? ground cover, shrub, annual, perennial. That's what this is going to be. Light. Do you need full sun, part shade, shade? Water demand. Hopefully by now you've noticed that we are on a trend of water conservation. So you don't choose high water demand, but those are in there too. So choose low or extra low on the water demand. If you have a sprinkler system and maybe a tiny yard and you're not going to use a whole bunch of water, maybe medium. But this is where you select that. Landscape use, ornamental color. Do you want native or adapted or both? You can do that. I urge you to go native if you can. Adapted they're all going to be good choices. Anything on this plant list, you cannot go wrong. They've all been tested, observed, researched. They're all going to do well for you. The season, the plant form. Do you want conical? Do you want feathery? That's what this is. How big do you want it? And finally, do you want deciduous or evergreen? And then you click search plants. It's a fantastic database. I urge you to start your landscape design using this resource. All right, let's jump to soil because I see a lot of people making mistakes with this. There is a club warehouse. I can't mention the name of it. It's the one that I go to all the time. I'm a member of. Once a year, they put out a bunch of soil. And I talked to some of the people there just to see what their application is. And, sometimes it's potting soil and sometimes it's garden soil. And people get confused thinking it must be, and it's in a plastic bag. So I must be able to put it in my container for my container plants. That's not the case. This soil, for instance, is supposed to be like an amendment. You add it to your existing soil and till it in, kind of like you would do with compost, okay? If you just use this straight, it could burn your plants. It could be too rich. But some of these, you have to read the bag. Some of these garden soil labels, it'll be ready for use straight out of the bag. So make sure you read the fine print. It'll tell you to be added to your existing or native vegetable or flower bed, or it'll say ready to use. Make sure you read that. Topsoil is just dirt. It's not high quality. It's really meant to just fill in potholes and things like that. It's not going to be something that you should fill your vegetable garden with, unless you've got tons and tons of compost that you can amend it with. This is just dirt. Potting mix is what it says. It's for pots. Not ideal for in-ground use as an amendment because a lot of times you're going to have some styrofoam in it for aeration and for to make it more lightweight. That will float if you put it in the ground. You're going to see all these styrofoam bubbles just kind of floating in your soil. So that's not the correct application. This is just for your containers. Let me go back to this topsoil. The reason I do buy this sometimes, those big pots that you have, I have 2 in front of my front door. I'm very selective and only put annuals in those pots because I don't want, I want some pizzazz and some color, but I don't want to spend a lot of money on annuals because they don't come back the next year. So in those pots, if they're really big, I don't want to spend a bunch of money on good quality potting soil. So I will fill the bottom half with this cheap topsoil just to fill it up. And then I'll put the yummy, good potting mix on top for my roots to enjoy, my plant roots to enjoy. A lot of people say, oh, shouldn't you put some empty 1-gallon plastic jugs at the bottom? No, maybe in other climates, like the top 10 precipitation list I told you, they would be okay because they're always getting rain. But for us, because of the drought, our roots want to go deep in search of water. So if you've got a moist bottom in your pot, you're going to be better off. Your plants will be healthier instead of the roots going down. And then there are those plastic jugs and air. They not good, not a good situation. I've done both. I've tested 2 of the same pots, filled one with jugs before, the top with good soil. I did another container with this on the bottom and then good soil on top. Every time this combination works. So I urge people, I don't recommend using the plastic bottles in the bottom of pots. Not here anyways. All right, we're almost done here. Kind of sad, but you're probably getting tired anyways. A lot of information overload. This is a really cool tool to have for soil, especially if you're doing a raised veggie bed or you have, you need to go out and buy some mulch, or maybe you want to use my idea of putting gravel around your air conditioning and you need to know how much gravel do I need to buy. Just go to soilcalculator.com. What's your container? Your raised vegetable bed. Is it rectangular, circular? Click on it here. How many do you have? What's the depth, length, and width? It calculates it for you. Right here, if you're buying it by the bag, like at a big box store, I'm sorry, at a loose, at the big stores where you load it up loose bulk in the back of your truck or have it delivered, you need to get 18 cubic feet. Cubic yards, 0.67. Okay. Bags, if you go to a big box store, if it's a small bag, that's 0.75 cubic feet, you need 24 bags. If it's a larger bag, 18. If it's a 2 cubic foot bag, you only need 9. So you won't overbuy or underbuy if you go ahead and do your research here. Save trips to the store. Free website. It also does mulch and stone, not just soil. You'll just have to go to other calculators here. Absolutely free. You don't have to sign up. It's just there for you. All right. I've talked your head off. If you guys have any questions, I'm here to help you out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and we really, really appreciate you guys spending time with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. I'll open up the Q&A and see if we've got anything. I don't see any questions right now. We'll give them a few minutes. If you have questions, you can enter them in the chat, or if you like to verbally ask the question, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you so that you can ask Loretta your questions. The evaluation form has been put in the chat, so you can get to that right away if you need to also.
If it's after tonight or, over the weekend, you decide you have a question, you guys can always reach out to us by calling us at 884-1944. You can email us. If you have pictures, that's even better to help us understand what's going on. But we are here to help you.
Okay, we've got one that raised their hand. Terry Sheffield. You should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes,
Hi,
sir.
Terry.
Thank you. I just
Okay.
had a quick question. I have a plum tree. It's its second year, and I'm wondering if I need to prune it, or when is the best pruning? Is that also like an oak tree when it's not active, or should I have done that in the spring?
No, that oak wilt is only for oak trees. Generally speaking, fruit trees need to be trimmed in the dormant season. So you want to wait until winter hits before you trim that tree. So don't do it yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Larry wants to know, are there any databases which list messy? For example, like a crepe myrtle.
Oh, messy plants?
Uh-huh.
Ooh, that I don't know. I bet there's some articles about it. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, desert willows are a native, beautiful tree, small tree or large shrub. I love them dearly, but they can be a mess. They can drop their leaves and the flowers during certain times of the year. They're very messy right now because they're dropping their leaves in preparation for winter. We know crepe myrtles are a little bit messy. A lot of the mulberries are native here, but they can be messy. Birds can come and eat the seeds and leave deposits, if you know what I mean. So a lot of people don't want to plant those near their concrete patio or driveway because birds will make a mess with that. I can't think of anything else that's really messy. I know there's a lot more. I guarantee you there's an article out there. If you type in things like which plants to avoid around a pool, that's a really good topic. There's a lot of articles out there, people saying, don't plant this around a pool because you don't want that debris in a pool. So I think that's a really good way for you to start.
Okay. Another question. What studies have been done to support the companion planting chart that you shared?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know exactly. I know that Texas A&M has done the research on the plant varieties, but as far as the companion planting charts, there are several out there. I don't know exactly. I can't answer that.
Okay. Those are the only two we've got in the Q&A.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. I guess you just covered everything so well. They don't have any questions, Loretta.
Maybe too much. Thank you, everyone.